Did you know that experts call gold the everything hedge? Gold goes far beyond hedging against inflation or just the stock market. It can potentially guard against today's wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, not to mention the great economic danger of a recession lurking around the corner. That's why gold just hit a record high again. And the central banks, they keep buying gold at a record pace. Join the thousands of people who have called Goldco the #1 rated gold company. Diversify your money with time-tested, safe haven assets, physical gold and silver. Today, Goldco is offering up to 10% instant match and free bonus silver with a qualified account. Plus, visit KandissLikesGold.com to qualify for a free 1-ounce silver Ronald Reagan coin. And I love Ronald Reagan. That's right. Go to KandissLikesGold.com or call 844-903-GOLD. Free bonus silver, free Reagan coin, free gold and silver information kit. What are you waiting for? Hey everybody, welcome to Jesus, Guns, and Babies. I'm your host, Dr. Kandiss Taylor, and I have a new guest tonight. You're going to like him. I can't wait. I don't know him very well, so we're going to get to know him together. I'm going to start with Proverbs 27:17. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. Another version says, iron sharpens iron and one man sharpens another. So he and I have different views on some things. I know because I've looked at his Twitter page or X page or whatever, but we also have a lot of the same views. And so it's going to be interesting. I met him on X. And so anyway, his name is Caleb Maupin. He is a political analyst, journalist, and he is the founder of the Center of Political Innovation. So welcome to Jesus, Guns, and Babies, Caleb.
Sure. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in politics or where you're from or whatever you want us to know.
Well, that's interesting because, I never would have guessed in a million years that I ended up where I ended up. I'm from a little town in Ohio. It's called Orrville. It's where Smucker's jelly is manufactured. If you've ever had
that
jelly. Yes. And I graduated in a high school class of 115 people. I'm really lucky, and it's taken me a while to realize how lucky I am because I grew up with a mom and a dad, and we ate dinner together every night. We said a prayer before we ate dinner. We went to church on Sunday morning. We also went to church on Wednesday nights. And, having that foundation in your life really kind of gives you a head start in a lot of ways. And I hope that someday we can have an America where every kid gets that foundation. But as I got older, I got involved in politics. And when I was in college, I was involved in some left-wing activism. And I ended up moving to New York City and working for U.S. Attorney General or former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark. He was Lyndon Johnson's Attorney General. And after he left being Attorney General, he became an anti-war activist, and he was Saddam Hussein's lawyer when Saddam Hussein was arrested. And he was the lawyer of Slobodan Milosevic. He was a huge critic of the International Criminal Court. And so then I became the spokesperson for Ramsey Clark during the Occupy Wall Street protests. And I started representing his nonprofit, the International Action Center, on international television during the Occupy Wall Street protests. And then I ended up visiting the Islamic Republic of Iran, visiting Venezuela, visiting a lot of countries around the world. I ended up as part of a humanitarian mission to try and bring aid to Yemen with the Iranian Red Crescent Society. And that was a life-changing experience where I rediscovered my faith in God on the ship and, rediscovered my Christian faith. And that was kind of amazing for me. And I work with Russian media. I'm the New York City correspondent for RT, which is the TV network from Russia. And it's weird because I've been on quite a journey. If you would have talked to me 10, 15 years ago, I never would have guessed that I would be, hoping that Donald Trump wins the upcoming election. But that's where I'm at. And I never would have guessed that I'd be on a podcast with you. But here we are, right?
Oh, Jesus, Guns, and Babies.
Absolutely. But, I like Jesus, I like guns, and I like babies. So, I mean, it fits, and that we're in a strange moment where nothing seems to make sense. Nothing politically seems to be the way it used to be. We have to just question our old assumptions, because there is a deep state in this country that is determined to start World War III, that wants to drive down the population and drive down the living standards, that wants to take away our rights. And that is the biggest threat to the American people. It's also the biggest threat to the people of the world. So anyone who's against that deep state, I want to talk to and engage with, even though we probably disagree on a lot, but that's okay. I'm on your side, and that's the point.
Yeah, I think, Caleb, we're missing it because there's a lot of people in the Republican Party I don't agree with, right? And so I'm part of the Republican Party now. I'm the first district chair of 15 counties. I ran as a Republican. I've been a Republican all of my life. But I thought it's because I believe in the Republican values. I didn't know that like there was rules and you have to do things their way and you're supposed to serve your time and be a good little girl and run for a small seat and then run for a bigger seat. Like I didn't know any of those rules. I thought, hey, I feel called to run. Ben Carson spoke when I got my PhD in counseling, and I feel like I'm called to run. And I was in the Capitol building several years later, and in the U.S. Capitol building, and I was standing on the Senate floor, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a U.S. Senator one day. So when the U.S. Senator resigned, Johnny Isakson, and I thought, I'm going to run for that seat. And I did. And then my numbers went up and down all night, and I thought something's bad wrong. The election was stolen from President Trump. My own numbers, and I did not win, but I knew I did not win, but my numbers still were fluctuating. It was very odd. And so I thought something's not right. And I then ran for governor because I thought Brian Kemp was part of the problem. He didn't do anything to help fix the elections in Georgia. And so who are you to run for a statewide seat? You little girl that's been a public school educator. You are not allowed. And so I don't like people telling me what to do or trying to put me in a box. And so I understand like not agreeing with everything. And even in the Republican Party, I don't agree with most of the people who have been in there forever. We do agree on abortion, or we'll agree on less government control, or we'll agree that inflation's through the roof and we need to quit sending money overseas. Like we might agree on some things, but I don't necessarily agree that I have to kiss up to the governor or whoever else walks in the room. I'm going to be respectful and act like a Christian because I love Jesus. But I might say to him, you're lousy and you made really bad decisions and you only care about money and power and you don't really care about us and you're not a public servant. And I might just say that to their face, and I don't care. It's like, how are we going to function as a society? This is not playtime. This is war, and we're losing our country. So it's okay that we want to agree on everything. And you probably already don't agree with things I've said, like this stuff I believe in.
But I spoke with former Congresswoman from your state, Cynthia McKinney, a Democrat who left the Democratic Party. She didn't endorse Al Gore in 2000, and she became a Green Party candidate. And she and I were election observers in Russia of the election that they just had. And she said that she believes the elections in your state of Georgia are completely unfair, and that she's lost friends over that because, she felt that the elections were unfair a long time ago and that there's been issues there. But then when that became a contentious issue, where if you said that means that you support Donald Trump and all that, she's lost friends. But she's also critical of the vaccine mandates. She's very opposed to that. And, she's like me. She's somebody who, I thought I was on the left, but the left left me. I mean, the left has lost their minds at this point. I mean, with what they're trying to impose, that's not anything I signed up for. And what's important to me is stopping war. I mean, that's why I worked for Ramsey Clark. That's why I've traveled around the world to these conferences. I want peace in the world. And I mean, the idea of Kamala Harris continuing to be our vice president or being our president is a complete nightmare to me. I mean, she is very, very dangerous, and I'd be happy to talk about that with you if you want. But what else is on your mind these days?
Well, I don't want a female president or vice president at all.
Interesting.
So I want to see men that are leaders to do the hard lifting. And I feel like we're not in a place, and they think, oh, well, the feminist movement and all this, God's very clear about a man being ahead of the wife and the role of a wife. And I think that translates into government. Now, not saying that women shouldn't have a role. We do. And a lot of times women bring a lot to the table in details, and we bring a different side that is critical for the function of society. But in the executive branch and being the leader of the free world, how do you have a woman that can come in and be, well, I got and all these articles the other day for calling Donald Trump a butthole, but he can be a butthole. You know, he can be a New Yorker and be like this, and people get offended. But you need somebody to come in and have that harshness so that they understand he says what he means and he means what he says. And so it's a respect and an honor that men carry more naturally than a woman does. And so I don't want her for that reason, but also because she makes absolutely no sense and she talks in circles. And maybe that worked in law school for her. I don't know, but it is insanity when she speaks.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about Kamala Harris that many people don't realize is that her father is a Marxist economist. He taught at Stanford University, and she is estranged from him. The two of them are not on speaking terms, and she hates his guts. She will talk about her mother endlessly, but she never speaks about her father.
I wonder why.
Well, there was a pretty nasty divorce when she was a small child, and she grew up. There's a whole thing, you know, they talk about parental abduction and estrangement, where there's a divorce and the one parent scapegoats the other parent and uses the children as kind of a weapon. And she grew up with that. And if you look at her record as a prosecutor in California, I mean, she broke the law a lot.
I thought you were going to say prostitute for some reason. I don't know. Prosecutor, my brain heard prostitute. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And, you know, but there were many examples of drug labs that turned over false positive results where people didn't use drugs, but the drug test said they did. And that was not made clear. You can read Reason Magazine has done great exposés of just what an awful California State Attorney General she was and how she just had no regard for other people. So Kamala Harris certainly frightens me. But let me ask you, with what you just said about women in government stuff, what denomination of Christianity do you adhere to?
So I grew up as a Baptist my whole life, and then I got filled with the Holy Spirit after I had my second child. And so I went to a denominational church, and I was non-denominational forever. We go to a Church of God now because our Church of God has a really good children's program and a really good youth pastor, and we have a lot of friends that go there. We love the pastor that's there, so we go, and it's right down the street. It's so convenient. But I probably non-denominational. I just believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in the whole Bible front to back and relationship with him. And there's, you know, denominational things that, you know, I don't necessarily believe in every single thing they believe in, but the Baptists taught me a lot about scripture. They're very word-based. And so I am thankful for my foundation there. I think that really helps me with faith because I have a lot of scripture inside of my brain and in my heart. And so, you know, it helps that way. But I don't know what about as far as you're talking about the women thing. I ran for governor. So people's like, think I'm not this woman power person. I ran for governor because the Lord told me to. And I know it was because we have a good old boy system in Georgia. And so your friend that you talked to, or the lady that was a former senator, she would probably tell you this. We have a good old boy system in Georgia. And I learned that if we don't get someone to come in that's not a man, that can shake things up and say, nope, I don't want your money. Nope, you're not going to buy me off. Nope, I'm not going to sleep with anybody. You're not going to have blackmail on me, and stop it. We're never going to win. And I think she's right. I think that we've had elections for a really long time, and both sides is the establishment. And really and truly, who knows who would be in office right now if it were fair and legal elections. But the people that are there have made themselves very wealthy. And the majority of the people there's some good people that are there that are not that way, but they're very few. The majority of people have made themselves very, very wealthy. And if they control the voting system, they never leave office.
Yeah. Well, you know, some good things are happening. I mean, I really like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, and the way she talks about war and the spending on Ukraine and all of that. There's many times I hear her talk when I just applaud. You know, so it seems like there's some good voices coming out of your part of the country. Also, you know, after the State of the Union from Biden, Katie Britt in Alabama, she gave the rebuttal, and the whole internet was making fun of it. Oh, this is awful. I thought it was a great rebuttal because she talked about what working families in this country are actually going through and how
it just seemed robotic and kind of forced. That was why.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought it was a good talk. I thought it was a good presentation, and I will say that you know, the internet is completely rigged by some very bad forces, and I think, you know, that's actually how I got interested in you to begin with is I saw, the way that you were being just kind of maligned and unfairly treated, right? And I thought, I've been subjected to that myself. I mean, there's a lot of things about me out there that are the same kind of thing where they take things out of context and they just blast, things, to give a negative impression of a person where they're not even giving a fair representation of who you are or what you believe. They're just trying to kind of inoculate people against you. And I saw that how that's been done to you and how unfair it is, right? And that, and so I started following your work, and I appreciate a lot of what you do. I follow your tweets as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Caleb. Really, it's almost like they try, like if you have a strong personality or you say things that are the truth, because the truth in our today's society is so foreign. It's everything's about political correctness and everything's about everybody's trying to fit in and everybody's trying to make everybody happy. We don't actually say what we really think. We kind of hold back, or if we say a piece of what we really think, we kind of sugarcoat it. And I'm not a sugarcoating kind of girl. I'm sweet and I love everybody and I want everybody to be saved and go to heaven. I want anybody to go to hell, even my enemies. Like, I don't want you to go to hell. I want you to find Jesus. But I also, if you're a fraudulent pedophile and you hijacked an election and you took inappropriate showers with your daughter, I will say that on national TV. So those kind of things. And if I want to interview a flat earther, that doesn't mean I'm a flat earther. I can ask questions about flat earth, even if it's something that you think, why are you doing that? And I can make the Rolling Stones 3 times for doing it. So it's, and right now, I don't know if you know this, I'm on this liberal left-wing crazy show called The Boys. They have a character created with me as the subject that they try to create this character. It's insane.
Wow. Did they pay you for that? Did you get
No,
any?
I probably should sue them, right?
You should. Yeah.
Never sued anybody, but I should sue them. Yeah, so her name's Firecracker, and I've been called Firecracker, Firebrand over and over, but they, wear red lipstick. She even had Jesus, Guns, and Babies in her office, and she was a politician, superhero, and talks real Southern, over the top, nothing like me, but over the top. So, it's like they make your name famous, right? They make your name famous. I've had people tweeting, tagging me, calling me, texting me, messaging me, emailing me. Oh my gosh, you're on The Boys. They have a whole character about you on The Boys. I'm like, I know. And it's okay. Like, it's okay. They can poke fun and they can do all those things, because all it does is spread the message. Because just like you are an excellent example. You heard negative things and you came and started following. You're like, you know what? This is kind of not fair, an assessment of her. She does say things that's outrageous, but to me, Caleb, if we can say what's on our heart, whether I agree with you or not, I'm going to honor and respect you because that's how you feel. And it's what you believe. And I do believe in the scripture I read, iron sharpens iron. If we cannot have real conversations with truth, I mean, I can sit here all day and act like a Stepford wife. How is that going to help anybody?
Well, when I read the New Testament and I read the epistles, one thing that is abundantly clear is that this world is run by Satan. And if you're not being persecuted in this world run by Satan, you're not living a righteous and moral life. We should not expect this world to be treating people that act in a moral and ethical way and stand up for truth with the respect they deserve. It's actually the opposite, right? And that's a huge part of what Jesus was telling his followers. What Paul is making clear in the epistles is that we will be persecuted and we will be tested, and our family members are going to turn against us, and this is what it means to be somebody who walks and lives in a righteous way. So I remind myself of that a lot as I face how much of a challenge it is and how weird life is. I got to tell you, just last month, I got an invitation that I never thought in a million years I would get from Los Angeles Family Church. That's a church out in LA, and they support Donald Trump and his effort to bring peace to the Korean Peninsula. And they flew me to Los Angeles, and I spoke to this room full of Korean Christians about North Korea and about how we could possibly see peace on the Korean Peninsula with Donald Trump back in the White House. And I gave the perspective that North Korea has and how you have to understand North Korea's perspective. And it was a great opportunity, and that we are in such a strange moment as a country. But I feel like you and I, we speak for kind of the forgotten majority. And there is a majority of people that don't want World War III, that don't want the police state that's coming down. We don't want to be degrown and impoverished. And we don't like this cancel culture on the internet that's telling people how to think and how to be and making people afraid to speak their mind. And there's an explosion coming. And I think you and I represent different parts of that explosion. And it's going to come from many different parts of this country and many different backgrounds, but people are tired of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, even, and I don't know why the Holy Spirit just brought this to my brain, but even like homosexuality. So I have friends who, I'm sure in that lifestyle, we don't really talk about it, but like I know that they are. I love them. I don't judge them. Like that's their choice. Do I want marriage perverted in any way from a man and a woman? No, because I believe what the Bible says. But am I the judge? No. Do I think it's fair that someone who chooses, they have free will? God gave them free will. So if people say, well, what about Sodom and Gomorrah? Yeah, that's a real thing, but I'm not God. You're not God. We don't control people. So if I say, okay, well, you can't do this and you can't do that, then I'm no better than a hypocrite. Like you cannot tell people what they can and can't do. It's going to make them do it more. The love of God brings a man's heart to repentance. And so, people have to walk out their own faith and they have to walk out their own walk with Jesus. Like it's not for me to say. And so I think that right now, and that's on my mind because of the Republican platform, and we're going into the RNC stuff in the convention, and the Republican platform kind of took a weaker stand on being real firm on marriage or being real firm on abortion. And I said about abortion, President Trump, he appointed these justices that overturned Roe, and they put it back to the states. And so the abortion, well, I say preborn activists, they're, no, we want no murder. Well, I do not want any baby ever murdered, ever. I don't want any abortion. Abortion is murder. It needs to be dealt with. It needs to be criminalized. I want people put in jail if you kill and use it for birth control. Like, I don't want you ever killing a baby. But it's a state right. It's murder is handled with capital punishment or whatever the consequence is at the state level. And so these people are all up in arms because it's at the national level and they're not putting that in the platform. And I'm like, okay, but you have to have a line somewhere. Do we want less government or more? Do we want to go to war or not? There's certain things that are not the responsibility of the federal government. And just because it's something you're really passionate about, yes, I'm a Christian, I'm passionate about life, but I'm also an American and I want to honor the Constitution and it be done in order. There's an order for how things are supposed to be done constitutionally. So I don't know, people they want to control and they get really upset about certain things, but it's not in order. Does that make sense?
Sure, I can hear you, and that this is more of a state's issue, and that not wanting the federal government to impose something that seems to be a standard constitutional conservative position, right? I mean that we shouldn't have a federal government that mandates this. This is up to the states. This is up to local governments. When I hear you talking about the issue of homosexuality and the issue of abortion, I'll tell you one of the biggest cancels I ever got, and this tweet had like 20,000, 40,000 tweets, is I said, look, if you're against abortion or you're against gay marriage, I might disagree with you, but we can still work together. And I thought that was a pretty standard tweet. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. And the response that I got to that tweet, people saying, you want to work with people who want to murder me. And I'm like, hold up, people who want to murder you? No one wants to murder you just because they're opposed to gay marriage or they're opposed to abortion. I mean, the amount of and that was the biggest, I've been canceled many times, but that was the biggest cancel I got. And it was like Humanist Report, all these people are tweeting out, oh my God, how dare he say this? And I'm thinking, I just said, and I almost wanted to shake these people because these people are all out marching for Palestine right now. And I want to say, do you think that those Muslims out there marching for Palestine, you think they're for gay marriage? You think they're for abortion? I mean, I don't think so. And I mean, there's, I've worked with Roman Catholics on issues like the death penalty before. They're not for abortion. They're not for gay marriage. And that these culture war issues where people get fired up, if you don't agree with me, about this particular issue, you're a bad person and you must never be spoken to again. Like, this is toxic, and this is not how you change the world, right? You don't change the world by declaring some people to be just bad people. And on those issues, it's a matter of faith, right? It's a matter of your religious foundation. It's not something that you can convince with a logical argument, right? This is a matter of, of one's religious faith. So these are issues that an argument about are not even productive. And why is that what the media and all this wants us to be focused on? Are these issues that you can't change anyone's mind about, that are pretty set in stone? You either are for it or you're against it. That's my faith. That's it. That's not the issue I want to talk about with anybody. I want to talk about things where we can come to a point where we may be able to agree and move forward and fix things. So I feel like
I want to work with those people, Caleb. Like, I want to talk to those people who are rational. And I have a lot of friends, like I said, who are, I know they're gay. Like, I know they have a mate. We don't talk, it's not something we talk about, because they are talking to me about political issues and the economy and different things that we share in common. And I'm not talking about my sex life with my husband, and they're not talking about their sex life, because it's irrelevant. And so that's what I want, is people to keep things that are supposed to be private and intimate and none of anybody's business to themselves. I don't like the transgender push on children. I don't like the sexualization on children and them taking their innocence. I hate that. It is evil and it's not right. It's just like the Bible says about tying a millstone around your neck, making a child stumble. It's like, be cast into the sea and drowned. I don't agree with that. But as far as us working together, and we're human beings, we're Americans, we have to work together. We have to get over some of these issues and understand that whoever you choose to have sex with in the privacy of your intimate relationship has nothing to do with me. It's none of my business. I'm not God. I'm not paying their bills or not paying my bills. Like, it's none of my business. And you don't have to tell me about it. And you don't have to get offended online because I don't want to hear about it. And we've got to get to that place. I do want to talk to you about Russia and know and what you think about Putin, since you are really involved there.
I've met him a couple times. There's video of me talking with Putin. Have you seen that?
I have not.
So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. Do you want me to just speak? Or
yes, I like Putin. So like, it's,
okay, me too. So there you go.
I would be told like, he like Putin. Yes, I think Zelensky is a nut job, and I really like Putin. I think, do I agree with everything he's doing? No. Do I think that I want him to be the leader of America? No. But I like it. I like that he's an alpha, strong man, and he's doing what he thinks is right for his country, and he is protecting them at all costs. Like, that's what I want out of a president.
Well, when I've been in his presence, which I have been on, I think 3 or 4 occasions, I've been in the same room. One of the times I actually got to get up and ask him a question, and he responded to me, and we got to kind of have a back and forth. But there's something about him in his presence. He is so smooth and perfect. Like, I know he studies martial arts. He does judo, I think, and he does not, like, all of his motions are very clear and calculated. And when he speaks, he does not stutter at all. He does not miss a word. There's no ums, there's no uhs. It's like the most smooth thing. That there's something about the way he carries his body that is just perfect, right? I mean,
he's intelligent.
Yeah, he's a very, very intelligent and a very physically fit person. And there's just, it's kind of hard to explain. You have to kind of be in his presence to see it. One thing I will also say about Putin is that in US media, there's this image of him that he's a gangster, right? And he is not that at all. He's a family man, right? And that's when you hear him talk, like the 2 big points that I hear him talking about lately is he emphasizes we need to get over this legacy of colonialism and imperialism, and we need traditional family values. And every time he speaks and every time Russian government officials speak, that seems to be the focus. They're opposing imperialism, which I think on the right, you guys talk about globalism, right? And that's this global financial system that's trying to make the world poorer. That's what he's against.
Order. Yeah.
Yeah. He's saying we need to oppose that. And he's saying we need traditional family values. Now, the other thing about Putin, though, and this is really what gets left out of so much media discourse, is that in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia was doing very badly. Mass unemployment, 30% unemployment. That's when the drug gangs set up shop, and they had Muslim terrorist extremists trying to break Chechnya away. And it was just a really bad time. And like the population of Russia in the 90s went down by like 10%. People either left the country or died. I mean, it was a devastating time. And he ran for office on the platform that he was going to use all their oil that they have and all their natural gas to stabilize the economy, and that he would put the oil and gas under government control and start selling it internationally and use the oil and gas revenue to stabilize the Russian economy. And he said he was going to do it, and he got elected, and it wasn't easy. It took him 2 or 3 years to get all the oil kind of centralized, but then he did it. And the wages of the average Russian in his first term in office tripled. Can you imagine wages tripling?
No,
And
Jesus, we need it so bad.
yeah, he stabilized the economy. And that's why he's so wildly popular, is he said he was going to do something, and he did it. The country was in a really bad spot, and he fixed it.
That's similar to what President Trump wants to do with with oil here, right?
Well, I mean, has he called for nationalizing it for public control?
Well, he's talked about, fracking and opening things up and it not be so, closed off like it has been, and doing something to motivate the economy because the economy is gonna fall if we don't do something quickly, and gas prices what they are. And so that would be the quickest, I think, solution. So that's interesting that really helped Russia. So it's kind of a parallel there. Maybe not exactly the same thing, but similar.
Yeah, and that's, the people who hate him. I mean, before he got in, Russia was being run by British bankers, HSBC Bank and BP and all of that. They were in there, and he kicked them out of there. And some of them he bought them off. He said, "Look, we'll compensate you. We're just going to buy it from you." And some, they didn't go, so peacefully, and so it was a little bit more forceful. But he restructured Russia's economy to be Russia first, right? I mean, so if you want to make a parallel to Trump, right? Trump wants America first. It's Russia first, right? But when I go to Russia and I go to these international gatherings, I meet young people from India and from Vietnam and from China and from, South America and places like that. There's this new economy in the world. Countries that used to be very, very poor in Africa are rising up from poverty now. People who never had running water and electricity are getting it for the first time. There's this whole new economy rising in the world, and the United States government, instead of joining with it so that we get wealthier also, has decided to declare war against it. And this is the stupidest thing that we can do. Right. And it's like they're declaring war on our incomes. They want us to be poorer. They want our living standards to go down for the environment or whatever. And they want to stop these countries around the world from rising up from poverty. And this is just absolute foolishness. And that
it's very purposeful, Caleb.
Yes. Well, go on. Tell me what you think.
Well, it's very purposeful. And I love it. Like, I love hearing this perspective from someone else because it's purposeful. And they want us to fail. They're trying to destroy America. They're trying to destroy America to level the playing field. It's the rich 1%, and they're gonna, be elitist, and we're gonna all be paupers. There'll be no middle class, and America has the strongest middle class in the world, and so they want to disable it. So it's definitely an organized agenda from within.
Yeah. I mean, it's you think about that game when I was a kid, we used to play King of the Mountain, right?
Oh,
where
yeah.
one kid tries to get up to the top.
Yeah.
So basically we have the global 1% or the World Economic Forum, the people, they're already at the top. And so they want to say game over because they're at the top, and that the game must end so that they can stay at the top permanently. And the rest of the world is not going to accept this. And middle America is not going to accept this, but that's what they're trying to do. And when you hear about the World Economic Forum and, you're going to live in a pod and eat bugs and own nothing and be happy about it, that's what it is. They're trying to say game over so they can stay at the top of the pyramid. And I think humanity just isn't going to accept that, because the very nature of human beings is that's how God created us. We are tool makers. We build things, right? All the other species, beavers, they've been making their beaver dams the same way for thousands of years. And ants have been making their ant farms the same way for thousands of years. But human beings, in just 7,000, 8,000 years, we've gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones. There's something really special about us, growth and creativity and forcing the environment to serve us in a more efficient way and expanding our life expectancy. That's what it means to be a human being. And that's also a really big part of what it means to be an American. And the American Revolution was fought because the British wanted us to just be their trading hub in their global sea-based empire. They wanted us to just kind of be their ocean port where they could dump their tea on us and their products. And we said, no, we wanted our own economy. And that's why I don't think, there's this whole idea, well, the American Revolution was racist and all of that. Well, sure, there were slave owners involved and such, But the essence of it was, should we have economic growth or not? And the British Empire said no. The globalist, Dutch East India Company and all of them said no. And we said yes. As a people, we wanted to have growth. And that's what it means to be an American. Also, what you said about the middle class is very interesting because, in China, it is the Communist Party that is in power, right? And they have pictures of Mao but the strength of their communist system is the middle class, is that in their communist system, they've made room for people to start their own businesses, for, people to become wealthy in overall coordination with their state central plan. And Vietnam, which is also led by the Communist Party, has a very similar thing. I was in Nicaragua, which, interestingly, Nicaragua has the strictest anti-abortion laws of any country in the world. In Nicaragua, the government their slogan that is painted everywhere is Christianity, socialism, and solidarity. Daniel Ortega is the president. And the strength of their socialist system is their micro-entrepreneurship program, where the government loans money to people to start their own businesses. And, the communist world kind of realized the Soviet way of doing things, where the government runs absolutely everything, is not going to work, right? That it has its limitations. And what's weird is the woke left, right? Those people have nothing to do with what China or Russia or Nicaragua or Cuba or these countries are doing. In fact, they hate those countries more than anything, and they are trying to impose kind of a woke agenda here at home and around the world. And it's those people that are destabilizing countries and pushing us for wars. And that is one thing I frequently hear in conservative circles. People say the woke left are Marxists. Well, they might think they are, but the Marxist governments around the world want nothing to do with those people. I mean, I've been to communist countries, and they are not woke. I'll just tell you that much. They are not into the transgender thing, right? If you went down to Venezuela, or if you went to Vietnam or China and said, we're going to start, doing the transgender thing with kids in school, they would probably throw you in jail. So there you go.
Right. They're not totally immoral. Like, we have this really whack immoral thing. Maybe our middle class is so strong because we're so heavily armed, and I think that that's another component that we often forget, and people forget that are on the left, especially, like, they totally forget that we are armed. And the reason why I'm getting in conversations all the time on X, people are like, but school shootings, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. Because hurt people, and sick, twisted people are going to do that no matter what. But because we're armed, China's not just coming over here. Russia's not coming over here. People aren't coming over here. And honestly, you don't see them burning down cities in rural Georgia, because literally they would be killed. You don't see that happening.
The first gun law ever passed in this country was in Louisiana, and it was that no former slave could ever have a gun. And the history of gun control in this country has been largely about disarming Black people and disarming working people, labor unions. When workers, in coal mines and steel mills were on strike and they wanted to defend their picket lines, they would make a law, oh, no one can have a gun. Gun control has always been a tool of the 1% against the people. Right. And the fact that liberals have attached to it. Look, I'm sympathetic. I understand that, parents are scared about their kids going to school and all of that. And I don't want to belittle that. And it's a little bit of a different situation than it might have been 50 or 60 years ago. But gun control, the idea that this federal government that has lied to us so many times and brought us into wars, that has destroyed our economy, they should be the only people to have guns. That's terrifying, isn't it?
It doesn't scare me for kids to go to school, as long as there are teachers and administrators who are carrying as well, and nobody knows it. That it would fix every problem, because I promise you, people wouldn't come in there with a gun if they knew they were going to be shot at the time they walked in. So, it's about control and being proactive, and not being a sitting duck and being stupid. So, but I want to ask about Putin. So where is he spiritually? Like, what does he believe? Do you know?
He is a Russian Orthodox Christian.
Okay.
He grew up as a communist, right? Communist atheist, because that was the way things were, but he converted to the Russian Orthodox Church, and that is his teaching. What is interesting, though, is that, Russian Orthodox is the main religion in Russia, but Russia is actually the most Muslim country of any non-Muslim country in the world.
Right, and I knew that. That's why I thought he was not a Muslim, but I wasn't sure if he actually called himself a Christian. That's why I asked.
He's a Russian Orthodox Christian. He's opposed to gay marriage. He's opposed to the transgender thing and such. But what's interesting is the Muslims do like him. And in fact, he's more popular in the Muslim areas than he is in some of the Christian areas. In some of the Christian areas, you have a lot of young people that are on Facebook and Twitter and believe the propaganda that don't like him as much. But in the Muslim areas, where they have just benefited economically from his policies, I mean, that was the main way they settled the conflict, right? When he first got into office, there was like a Muslim insurgency, and he settled it by giving people jobs. People don't become terrorists if they can have jobs and education. People don't become terrorists if they have schools for their kids and they have economic opportunity. And if you look at it, the regions where there was this kind of Islamist instability have gotten better because he created economic opportunity. And I think that's a very effective way. And China has done similar things in the Muslim region of China where they've had insurgencies and stuff. Fight terrorism, fight drug gangs, fight instability with jobs and economic opportunity. People don't do these things if they have a good life to live, and I think that's one thing that we ought to learn from them. If people's lives are getting better, they don't get involved in destructive things.
That's very true. It's very good, very, very wise comment there. They don't. If you're happy or if you're doing productive things and you don't feel like you're living without, then you don't try to, do something to someone else to take what they have or to destroy what they have. I want to comment on you saying that about his presence and being with him. The first president I ever met was George Bush Sr. And I was a student teacher in rural Georgia, and he came because he had a fellow Navy guy that he was in the Navy with in Pearl Harbor, actually. And he came there and gave an award away and spoke because this guy wanted to give an award to a teacher. Anyway, bottom line, Secret Service was everywhere. I'm young. I'm 21 years old, young, Secret Service everywhere. It was kind of intimidating for several days. But when him and Barbara came, their presence, when they walked in the room, like things shifted. And I had felt the Holy Spirit, and I know what Holy Spirit feels like, and it feels different, or, you're in prayer, or you feel, the presence of the Lord, but it's a different feeling than that. But it definitely was a royalty kind of dignitary presence. I'd never felt that before. And so he spoke and did all that. And then when I met President Trump, I consciously thought, I wonder if he's going to feel like Bush, if it's going to feel the same, if it's like a presidential thing. And it was the same kind of presence and President Trump was so kind. I mean, I've met him a couple of times. We've been in the room with him a couple of times. I've only spoken, interact with him one time, but every time I've been in the room with him, you can just feel that presence. But like speaking to him, so kind, so humble, totally shocking, was not what I was expecting him to be, but asking about me, not about himself, just so kind. And it was a feeling, though. It was like a presence. And so that's interesting that Putin had that too. I think that it's something to do with the power and the position and the office. And it goes back to scripture and what the Bible says about God putting kings in positions and giving them authority. And that's what I believe. And so it's very interesting, though. Very interesting.
Yeah, well, I got to interact with Donald Trump when in 2016 he gave a press conference at the old post office in DC. And I went, and there was a lot of reporters asking questions, but I was there as RT. And so he towards the end of his press conference, he's like, "All right, who's my favorite reporter? You." And he points to me. So people say I should put Trump's favorite reporter on like the back of my books and stuff.
Yeah,
I
you
don't do
should.
that. But he called on me, and I got to ask him about Russia, and he kind of interrupted me in the middle of the question and started talking, and then people were like, let him finish, and so he let me continue asking the question. But I was blown away by how tall Trump is, because
So tall, and I'm 5'2.5", so he's super tall.
he is. He's huge, right? He's huge. I didn't realize how tall he was, because that doesn't come across. TV kind of covers up heights, right?
And honestly, more handsome in person than what he was on TV. Like, I hated The Apprentice. I don't like really narcissistic men, I don't like that. And so he came across as like arrogant and like real narcissistic to me, and I just didn't. So I supported Ben Carson, obviously, when he ran in 2016, and then when he moved to Trump, we moved to Trump. But I was like, oh man, Donald Trump, I'm crazy about his personality. But then when he won and he did all these wonderful things, I thought, okay, I mean, he's so good he's anointed for business and for money and finances. So maybe that's why God has him. And then in 2020, I mean, I'm all in for Trump. And then I met him, several times. And it's like when I met him, I was just like fell in love with him. Like he's so awesome. And I believe God's anointed him to do this. And people say, oh, well, it's all about him and there's these Trump worshipers and he's their Jesus and all that. No, it's so not true. Like I really had mixed feelings about him running again because of his age and them allowing him to win and just everything. But I think it was definitely stolen, and God had things he needed to finish and do that he didn't get to do. And so I think that's why, you know, he's running again to finish what he didn't get to finish that was really stolen from us, not from him. It's from us. It's our seat. The seat belongs to us. It doesn't belong to him. So I had mixed feelings about him running again, but I'm all in, love him. I'm so glad he's running. There's nobody else that I feel like could even hold a candle. And I loved Ron DeSantis before he ran. Now that he ran, I have mixed feelings about Ron DeSantis now. It's like crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. I will say there's a couple things that give me hope. One is John Bolton. He said that if Donald Trump wins, the USA will pull out of NATO. And that would be amazing. I would love for the United States to pull out of NATO. So I hope that happens. The other thing is the Korean Peninsula. He met with Kim Jong-un, and that was such a big moment. So much hope. And Biden has done everything he can to try and undo that. And it was clear
pushing.
Yeah. And it was clear that that what happened, I mean, while Trump was meeting with Kim Jong-un, they were trying to undermine him. It didn't get a lot of press in the United States, but in Spain, they have relations with North Korea. North Korea has an embassy in Spain. And during the peace process, there was an attack on the embassy of North Korea in Spain by a whole bunch of American people tied to the CIA. And they just went into the North Korean embassy and they took computers and they trashed the place. They were trying to undermine it. And then John Bolton gave that interview where he said, well, Libyan options are on the table. Well, we know what happened to Gaddafi. You don't say that in your negotiations. He was trying to sabotage it from the beginning. But one thing that I think will be possibly a good thing about Trump, if he's back in office, is that all the people that were trying to undermine Trump, they all betrayed him, right? Mike Pompeo, supported the prosecution. John Bolton has been saying all of this. And so when Trump gets back in, he's going to know who's really with him and who's not.
I pray so. We're praying for that. We're praying for good people around him and for him not to, be influenced. I still think he's got some people around him, even now, that probably are not the best, influence. I think, even though he thinks he's accomplished what he needs to accomplish with like the life, the pro-life stuff. I think that as a Christian, and he's a man, and men have a different view. Men are like, I don't want to tell a woman what to do with her body. But it's way more than that. Like the child has no voice, like they have no right. And so murder's murder. And I think that he probably should have taken a more Christian view, but then if he doesn't feel it in his heart, I don't want him to lie either. So maybe that's what he needed to do. I don't know. I just feel like he's lost some people. There's a lot going on in the Republican base right now about that. People are really upset. And so it kind of threw everybody aback because they thought he was so pro-life. And I don't think he really is. I think he is more like leave it to the states, which I agree, it should be a state issue. But then for me, it's a Christian issue. If he is a Christian, which he says he is, then why would you believe in murder? So it's kind of it's hard.
Yeah, well, the group that I run, the Center for Political Innovation, we're neutral on those issues. We have people in our group that are very, very opposed to abortion, very, very opposed to gay marriage, people that are, fundamental Baptists and other things. And we have people in the group that are gay or do believe in abortion. And our position has been, we just don't want to talk about that because these are not issues that are going to bring us together. These are issues where, again, it's a matter of faith, it's a matter of personal belief, and that if we as an organization take a stance, and one thing I have learned the hard way is if you take a stance on an issue like that, it's never enough. Kind of like what you're saying about leave it up to the states is not enough. No. They want you to, and if you make these kind of culture war issues what you focus on, it's never enough. And then you've got to disavow and denounce every person. And then you've got to, and it's a trap that I think that when you talk about the 1% or the elite. That's what they want us to do, because these are issues where we can just get divided, and they want us all to be isolated and atomized and, on our own, so that they can rule over all of us. Yeah, so they can rule over all of us, right? Because we're not connected with each other, because that's how we get strength as human beings, is through working with other people, connecting with other people.
But one thing we agree on is I don't want war.
Yeah.
And we had the greatest America we've ever had under President Trump with 0 war. So I think that there's a lot of Democrats I've actually spoken with who are going to vote for him just because of that, because they've noticed it. Like, we didn't have war, and ever since he's been out, they've been trying to get into war. And so we're definitely going to be back in war if we get a Democrat again for 4 more years. So they're hungry. They're like a feeding frenzy. They want war so bad. So let's just get somebody in who's like, no, we're not going to war, because we're not going to waste the money. We're not going to kill people. We can negotiate. We can be grown men, and we can hold the line without killing people.
Yeah. Well, people say, it's common. People say, well, Donald Trump is a narcissist. Well, a narcissist is somebody who cares about their own ego and their own reputation. And if Donald Trump being a narcissist would cause him to not take us to war because he doesn't want to be remembered as the president who started World War III, that's fine with me. That's good enough for me. And that, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, neither of them are up there. They're not really all there, so to speak. So who's really running the country? Well, with Donald Trump, again, he may be a narcissist, but he would actually be running the country. And that's a step over what we've got right now, because Biden clearly is not running the country. Kamala Harris is not running the country. There's some other people we never got to see, and we never got to for, and they're running the country, and they are very dangerous. I know that much.
Yeah, maybe Barack, maybe Michael. I don't know, somebody.
Big Mike, huh?
Somebody. Maybe he's going to be the president. I mean, who knows?
Who knows?
But anyway, we have about 5 minutes. I just want, what else? I know I see a book behind you, so you've written at least one book.
I have. I've written a number of books, and again, I was a leftist in my 20s, but especially when I rediscovered my faith in God, my focus is on building and constructing. I don't want to tear things down. I don't want to harm anybody. I don't want a politics that's based on resentment and vengeance and all of that. I am all about construction. And when I have been to the countries around the world that are led by communist parties and such, that is their focus. It's on building, it's on constructing. China at this point, they've lifted 800 million people out of poverty. They used to be one of the poorest countries in the world. Now they're a superpower. And I want a politics that's about building. And that is very much in line with my Christian faith. And that's why, as the folks I was working with became totally wokeified in the lead up to Trump's presidency, I just couldn't continue being around them anymore, because that toxicity just tears you down, right? It just destroys you, right? And
it's a mental thing. It's like a mental block, and they can't see anything else but that. I mean, I had friends that got into that vein, into that line, rut, and I'm like, golly, that you can't even talk to them anymore. It's like, where I can talk about, they can tell me they can't stand Trump, and they can tell me they don't and agree. I'm like, okay, I can deal with that. Like, you don't have to like him. But whenever I say anything, it's like offended. And it's
right.
My gosh, I can't even have a conversation with you. I want, like, really quick, I want to hear, because I missed this and it just came back to me, about Venezuela. So Venezuela, I have a friend that's from Venezuela, and she's an American now, and she's ran for U.S. Congress a couple of times, but she's talked about the elections there and how they destroyed it. And she will get so passionate and cry because she's watched exactly what's happening in America happen in Venezuela and ruin her country. And she's like, and I came here, and then I'm watching the whole thing just play out again. But what do you know about that? Going there, talking to those people, like, what's your take on that?
Well, I probably have the opposite view of your friend. I'll just be real, because I was down there in 2015, and when the socialist, communist government first came in, they did a lot to really improve the lives of some of the poorest people in the country. Because there's a lot of people in that country that when back in the late 90s, early 2000s, they didn't even speak Spanish. They didn't have running water in their houses. They didn't have electricity. And they took control of Venezuela's oil, and they used that oil money to start providing people with electricity to provide.
Okay, well, this would have been back more than that, right? So this would have been back probably in the 80s and 90s. So it was way before 15 is what she's talking about.
Right. Well, and when I was there in 2015, things were not good, right? They were having a food crisis at that point, and that was because they don't grow their own food in Venezuela. They have oil. And the US government, their president Hugo Chavez was very popular, had died. They had a new president who wasn't as popular, and the USA was trying to destabilize the country. And so they put sanctions, so it was very hard for them to import food. And the oil price, Obama, conspired with Saudi Arabia to drop the oil price. So all of a sudden the government was getting way less money with which to import food, and people were hungry. And I went to neighborhoods in central Caracas, and I met people who said, you know what, we are going down fighting. I met one young woman. I interviewed her, and she said, God brought me into this earth to die for Hugo Chavez. That is my purpose. And, they have these community militias they have called Bolivarian militias that are like separate from the army, but are people that want to defend the revolution. And, they've got, big paintings of Jesus and Stalin right next to each other. And they are like, we are going down fighting. You will never retake over our country. We wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for Hugo Chavez and for the communist government. And that's why they're still in power. When I go to Venezuela, it's a lot like going to Iran, which I've been to a number of times. It's about a third. You get a third of the people that are against the government, right? They watch American media, they're against the government. Then you get a third of people that are like indifferent, kind of. They're like, well, the government's done some good things, but they've also done some bad things, whatever. But then there's a third of people that are like all in, and they're like, I will die for this government. I will fight for this. I believe in the revolutionary ideology. Often they live in special like communities where there's other people like that. And such. And that is how Iran and Venezuela, that's how they stay in power, is that there's a third of the people there that are ready to give their lives and die for the principles, right? And whether you agree with those principles or not, that is the strength of a government that can actually stand up to the rich and powerful and stand up to the global 1%. When they have a layer of people who have decided they are in this for real, they are dedicated, and they are armed, and they will never surrender. I think that's how George Washington defeated the British Empire. There was a group of people like that in America. It wasn't the majority.
That's interesting, because I see that group of people rising in America.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. I hope.
I don't read the election.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for having me on. And I want to bring you on my channel, actually.
Yes, I will come.
All right.
Maupin. I will come. And so tell everybody how to get in touch with you.
My organization is the Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org. That's where you can check us out. I'm on YouTube, all the social media outlets. And yeah, this was fun. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, God bless you. Thank you for coming. And I will definitely come on your show. You can come back anytime. Well, especially if we have something that's like foreign, like you're so good with the foreign stuff.
Okay. Well, great.
So we'll get you back. All right. I'll see you next week on the Sue Peters Network. I love you. God bless you. God bless America.
God bless America. Thank you.
Did you know that experts call gold the everything hedge? Gold goes far beyond hedging against inflation or just the stock market. It can potentially guard against today's wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, not to mention the great economic danger of a recession lurking around the corner. That's why gold just hit a record high again. And the central banks, they keep buying gold at a record pace. Join the thousands of people who have called Goldco the #1 rated gold company. Diversify your money with time-tested, safe haven assets, physical gold and silver. Today, Goldco is offering up to 10% instant match and free bonus silver with a qualified account. Plus, visit KandissLikesGold.com to qualify for a free 1-ounce silver Ronald Reagan coin. And I love Ronald Reagan. That's right. Go to KandissLikesGold.com or call 844-903-GOLD. Free bonus silver, free Reagan coin, free gold and silver information kit. What are you waiting for?